Echoes are defined by the space in which they reverberate. At least to our ears, they change with each occurrence, they decay. No surface is perfect enough. Are we destined to reflect until we dissipate? There is a knot and a strand that tightens. As of me writing this, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is only about 2 months old, so we are unsure how many Game Awards it'll win. My guesses are Game of the Year, Best Narrative, Best Score, Best Debut Indie, maybe they can scratch that out, and then for sure Best RPG. Clair Obscur is a truly special game. Turn-based RPGs have been getting a lot of disrespect as time moves onward. The disrespect has been gradually going down, but there's always been a looming avoidance from AAA companies. I think the biggest middle fingerhead came from Square Enix themselves with Final Fantasy 15 and 16. Though various reasons are stated, like trying to meet sales goals and demographics being more interested in action games, the invalid sentiments come from being a numbered entry in a long-running RPG series. Yakuza knew this and they made their Like a Dragon series separate. Resident Evil can kind of get away with a genre change, but they've been doing that from the beginning. Going from turn-based combat to slightly more active turn-based combat doesn't count. When you do what they did with Resident Evil 3 to 4, yeah, you don't blame them for taking chances every once in a while. Final Fantasy took a chance with 15 and many of those decisions did not pan out. Final Fantasy took another chance with 16, which, to be clear, the trailers before the game came out, the game looked awesome, didn't matter if it was turn-based or not, but it still did not deliver. And apparently, Rebirth did not deliver either, which is more surprising to me than anything else, because they actually tried more to cater towards a originally appealed audience in a new one. All this said, major corps have been moving forward towards action games. Like, there's Atlas, but they're an outlier with a dedicated base. Baldur's Gate 3 is an outlier, but then again, even if it wasn't, it came out so recently that we wouldn't see the shift in tide yet. Clair Obscur is the tipping point, I'm sure of it. Modernizing turn-based combat and being a smash hit. The best of an art form visits a couple times a decade. Minecraft brought about the endless wave of open sandboxes, Skyrim enforcing the open world, Fortnite brought about an endless amount of garbage games, but it also objectively changed how multiplayer games can even be marketed and or exist. Many of those games are free to play, and though most of us have the kind of jaded perspective known as history, this is also a good thing overall. Everything has its cons, not here to really argue that. Surprisingly, in this decade, Clair Obscur takes its time to correct a lot of RPG history. You see, the best of RPGs in modern times have one dissuading factor: length. Even if you loved Persona 5, Baldur's Gate 3, Witcher 3, hell, honestly any Bethesda title, to play any games like that, you have to subject yourself to about 60 or 100 hours plus, or else. Which means sales for those games can probably be pretty high still, but completion rates can be quite low, and that will leave an unsatisfying feeling in many, but equally, if you aren't loving the game anyway, you may as well drop it, or you're gonna drop it. Clair Obscur is a reasonable length, about 30 hours. If you play the game for about 2 hours every day across 2 weeks, you'd be just about done. Even engaging with some side stuff, that's just like another 2 hours a day for another week. You aren't treating Clair Obscur like a campsite you're stuck at for 2 months. It's a pleasant vacation. Also, a densely packed vacation. It's not missing any RPG staples, so you won't feel like it had to be much longer of a game. For me, I have a hatred of RPGs beginning with this sort of green foresty look every time. The way Clair Obscur fixes this is a lengthy prologue in the most French-ass area possible. You get settled with this developed area before going out into the world, as well as any other dramatic visual I won't spoil here. But to summarize, this issue is handled best in this game than most any RPG I've played. Besides maybe like Chrono Trigger having a city area, but and also a festival despite of the visual elements. But Clair Obscur with full 3D graphics in modern times does a very good job of this. Clair Obscur reaches really high highs, especially in the later acts. The deeper you go, the better the game looks and the more you can traverse. The cast isn't limited to the people that you meet up front, and that's the most I'll say without spoiling, so let's just talk about 3 of them. Gustav. He is a treasure of a character. Charlie Cox gives what may be the best performance vocally in the game. I don't know if there's really an argument against that. I think a lot of characters also do a really good job, but he has so much heart and so much emotions, even down to the mocap. He feels very much like a pain soul just trying to move things forward, like a big brother. Gustav isn't necessarily inspiring, but he has a character that makes you want to stick with him and believe in him. Lune is this very intelligent scholar with some trauma she's still meddling with. She isn't the hyper mission-oriented character, but she's the scientist character that those sorts usually end up being, if that makes sense. Protocols and progress and keeping everyone alive to see their goals through, almost in a delusion at times with that. Ciel is the opposite of this archetype. She is free and relaxed, but that's because she's gotten to the opposing end. That's because she's gotten to the opposing end of trauma management. She's changed from her trauma, but is also accepting of whatever happens next, even death a bit. That is part of why Lune's delusions are present. She can't imagine losing. Ciel has already passed loss and accepted the world in which she resides. There's more characters in the game, and all of those characters are done great, having pretty full character arcs. Some of them get a little touch and go with it being complete, but it's understandable when you see them. Clair Obscur has some of the best dialogue in any RPG I've ever played, hands down. The most significant descriptor is personal, informal. Sometimes the biggest issue with JRPGs is the writing feels like a script. Passionate performances can sell any dialogue, but Clair Obscur thrives in both categories. You see it more in later arcs, but there will be a point in which you can engage in extra optional conversations. And even if you aren't in love with the characters, the conversations they have are all interesting, intense little secrets. There are revelations that only happen in these side conversations too. And it's only because it's not essential to have these moments to move forward in the main story. It's essential if you like these characters. Performative dialogue, satirical dialogue, and more have their place, but Clair Obscur builds the right expectation and pays that off for the entire game. Minor thing for some, as this game has sold over 3.3 million units, and I would guess probably it's going to hit 5 or 8 million by the end of the year. Game Pass accessibility is for people like me, who was not into the game at all or knew anything about it until the world was obsessed with it, and Game Pass had like a $1 for 14 days deal, so I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Then I started blasting through, having me pay about $10 or $20 more to finish the game and do some side content. Fully worth it, as that made the barrier of entry far better for me, so I'm glad it's on Game Pass. To be clear though, it's still worth buying, but if you're like me and truly unsure, give it like 10 hours on Game Pass. It won't hurt you, and there's probably one of those deals going on, so you can probably get a good deal to try it out. At the end of the beginning section, I had commented on how turn-based combat was disrespected in the industry for a long time. How Clair Obscur modernizes it is doing what all games end up doing, borrowing from Dark Souls. There's a parry and a riposte, and it's so good. You could do no hit runs in this game, you could do level 1 runs or no XP runs, solely because of the parry and riposte mechanic. My bestie was playing on Expert, and the parry and riposte there was far more essential, but there's no hurdle you can't overcome that way. My only advice is if you do damage and it doesn't do a reasonable amount of HP, you'll know when you see it, then you're underleveled. Funny enough, being one-shot is not at all the tell. Many enemies will just do that. It's when you don't dish it back. Even on optimized builds, as long as you're trying, should do okay damage at worst, not imperceptible. Now this is a minor one, but I gotta love it. The ability to wear costumes in any cutscene is amazing. I have no personal footage of that, and you really shouldn't do it for a first playthrough. The story gets so serious, but honestly, a feature more games need. Alt outfits, or even just silly outfits, and you can just wear them in cutscenes, even as a New Game Plus feature. It would add replayability a lot for people like me, like the idea of seeing, like, let's say the main character of Persona in like a monkey suit the whole time, or that's what makes games like Saints Row 4 back in the day really charming, because that is how those things would work. Story beats so serious and philosophical, and you're just in swim trunks. It's just, that's so fun. We need more of that. Clair Obscur is not the perfect game, and it's not just, it's a 10 out of 10 but has some problems. No, there are many issues to know about Expedition 33. Lots of first game jank. The functionality of movement in Clair Obscur does not feel good, where aspects like the parry and riposte are so sharp and consistent. Jumping and moving around kind of feels awful. Recently I made a video about a game called Burgeist, and honestly the movement feels similar to an indie title, so I'm just saying this is something that they should have just sharpened down way more. There's not many times where you have to really like jump around and mess with this aspect of it, but the times that you do, it just feels bad. And in modern times with this sort of company, and I would say the budget, but there's a whole story about it, just look into Clair Obscur videos, it's just like, This is not the game to have some optional parkour areas for this sort of movement, but it's there. It's in the same way that, funny enough, there were bad minigames in some other classic RPGs that felt like oversights, but like we didn't need to pull so tightly from Legacy. It doesn't need to be more satisfying, I just wish it was less cumbersome. This is also bad because Clair Obscur parallels the look of AAA titles too, but this controller jank, it feels AA or less. So like, the ceiling of quality towards AAA is lowering, but I still wish that ground floor was a little better tended to in this specific case. Very poor implementation of segmenting difficult areas. Is the point to just waltz around the wrong area and die to learn? Just make that more clear. There are a lot of explicit decisions made within Clair Obscur, like a more taxing use of a map system for the purpose of exploring. However, I even think this element was kind of undercooked, as I wish they kind of sharpened things like that. Specifically how they gauge difficult areas, the difference between an area with enemies with 10 times your health, near equal level, or 2 to 3 times your damage and health are all marked with the same danger ahead. This conditions you to wait or ignore these until you're ready. And the thing is, you don't know that if you just don't go back there for a while, you'll be way above being ready and then it's just a normal side area. And that's not really satisfying if they want you to engage in these things sooner. Personally, I think a color scaling system would have helped, or like color density. Like the more red the area is, the much higher difficulty it is. And the closer to white or some sort of neutral color means it's more survivable. Keeps the exploration element without breaking immersion with like a level requirement above the section, as sometimes people have requested. But if the purpose was just to explore, get beat, and come back later, I wish that intent was clear too. I didn't do most of the side content until way later because I simply didn't know when I'd be capable enough. Nor was I really curious about side content until way later. Eventually in Clair Obscur, it kind of brought up a little bit earlier, but there's like a bonding system with the cast, where you can learn more about them, talk about events happening in real time, game-wise. It's pretty cool. However, the game doesn't indicate when a character has new things to say. You eventually presume if you get a back to camp moment that there's probably new dialogue, but it isn't always true, and you don't know if you're missing a lot of dialogue until you try to engage with the character multiple times, which can really trip up the pacing of conversations if you're trying to do these things back to back to back, or in some sort of natural way. In the same light, I wish the rewards for these exchanges were a bit more unique for those who know what they are. I don't feel that way for all of those rewards, but some in particular wish had more unique flares to them. And finally, the Gestural Beach minigames needed a bit more of a touch-up. Not much more to add here, just a note of we've enjoyed these more with some of the movement being touched up, with some of the mechanics being touched up. All the non-movement ones are pretty fun for the most part. And this last one's particularly personal. Wish there was like an end game item tracker. Either after you beat the game or in the end game. I wish this was present. Somewhat for a completionist, but also more for me because there were some items I didn't get because I put off side content for a while, and going and collecting them after once I had beaten everything was far less satisfying. This is kind of a combo of all the prior issues, so I won't go into that more here. This is gonna be the big one. It's about the ending. So now I'm gonna give a big warning. I'm about to completely ignore the spoiler free in the top. This will be spoiling the ending of Clair Obscur. I have so much to say about it, and I want to give viewers who don't have immediate access to pausing the video enough time to do so. I'm going to be particularly slow with my words here. Also, here on screen is the timestamp to get ahead of it afterwards. But seriously, I'm really about to go in. It will spoil so much. And maybe if you don't know any of the story, it'd be incoherent, but if you're like in Act 2, you really don't want to be hearing these words. Alright, let's get into it. We're going to be talking about both Miles and Verso's ending. Number 1, Miles' perspective is far more narratively punched than Verso's, which can thematically make sense for the story, but does not land on paper. My issue is with this is, given the choice, with how the game is built up nuance in character and story, one ending is clearly meant to leave a bitter taste in your mouth. When I was initially making the choice, I took like 10 minutes trying to work it out. It was probably the most positive I felt about this decision. Keep in mind, for everything I'm about to argue, this is from sitting with these thoughts, researching, and more. In real time, in that 10-minute time span, I lacked a lot of the context I have now. Hello, this is Editor Valentine, and I think in my original description of the first issue I had, I don't think I got to the point. But in Miles' ending, I understand that you're supposed to feel some sort of punishment. I think it's an excess amount. I do think all the stuff with Verso before the time travel, is perfect. I do not think there's a version of the ending where Mael should not feel guilty for keeping Verso alive. However, I think it punishes the idea that keeping these thousands of people alive is a good thing too, and that's my issue. I think it overextends, particularly because it's saying, hey, we're going to punish you for preserving thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of lives versus one Verso, and that these people aren't real, and I don't think it earned that punishment feeling. Number 2. Verso's ending is genocide in exchange for letting a single man die immediately. So to establish, I'm going to interpret Mael's ending as all the characters in her ending are their original selves. This is vital, as if this component is untrue, then so much changes, and we have no way to know which one. So that's the presumption I'm going with. If you disagree there, then just skip to the next point. Verso's ending is genocide, an entire world ending. Keep in mind, if you were given any other perspective, in fact, let's go to Act 1 Gustav. If you take away Mael's split personality thing, and Alicia and Verso argue about ending the world or not, Gustav would beg just to bring everyone back, let them live and die proper lives. We were never wanting to be condemned for their family's decisions, but they exist. Taking away their agency is just as bad as Verso's fate, where, I'll be honest, I do see a world where Verso can accept his life and die eventually, which is another interpretation I'm having to commit to, that Mael would eventually let him go, as she isn't her mother. I understand that in the other ending, we can see that Mael doesn't let him die for whatever reason, but what I'm saying is I'm arguing straight with the fiction. In a world with the right characters and the right writing, I could see Mael arguing with Verso saying, hey, maybe you were manipulated to believe that death would be the best outcome. Has that ever been considered before? A lot of writing is about selling your audience on characters and their beliefs and ideas. In some of the clips here that you can see, Verso is very clearly calling everyone hypocrites and such. I understand that these are not the characters to have the right things to say to solve a situation. It'd be a very anticlimactic ending to this sort of game. And if the desired feeling is that I wish I could have spoken out to try to save things, I wish they honed on that more. But it gives the feeling that they just didn't sharpen Verso's resolve enough for me. Even if we can't get there through discussion, just as a reminder, for a family that even in the game we play, we barely know. For a character who, at multiple points narratively, had manipulated the audience, the cast, we're supposed to just give up the world for him? To repeat, thematically, I understand where this decision comes from, but the logic falls apart in so many places. It isn't a poor argument on Verso's side if you feel for his struggle. The game does paint his tragedy in a very real way. I don't blame anyone. If anyone's pro-Verso's ending, I don't blame you for making that choice. But if you chose Mael, then you get slapped in the face. I just wish they painted Mael's ending differently. No pun intended. You can have that bittersweet tone, but I don't like how they committed to it. My argument against Verso's ending is, it makes sense, but it isn't deserved. A subjective opinion. My argument against Mael's ending is that it's plain wrong. Still subjective, but I'm gonna argue it like it is the law of the land. The game itself states that these are real people. The game itself made an effort to say, hey, we are real, we have independent thought. They are not unpainted, but as real as you and I would be. Mael even offers to paint Lune a painting to view the real world. Is the painted lens of the real world a lesser view of the real world, or equal? That's why so much of this is about what's real and what isn't, and there's more evidence to support it as equally real. This narrative element is such a crux as to why I chose Mael's ending. It was the thing that swung me, as I can't condemn these people to die. I'm sorry, Verso, but I can't. If these are real people, then no, I would not choose to bury them. If these people were truly robots with no agency? Sure, but the game didn't try to argue that. Also, Act 3 needed far more about what Mael's life as Alicia would really be worth returning to, because it never really held enough for me. She can be someone here and die old. What's the difference between that and the real world? Yeah, Renoir is you'll die. Bro, you're gonna die. You almost died in the real world. What is the debate here? Maybe some would argue, why not just do this in a new painting? But I would counter with, I have a feeling her family would forbid her from this decision, for her own good. But what's more traumatizing than nuking a world for the sake of accepting your brother's death? That whole thought analysis is its own can of worms, though. I sat with it, and the more I thought about Verso's ending, the scene of everyone waving goodbye, how is this worth it? Is Verso's dialogue to insinuate that she should just paint somewhere else for her to go? Oh, you can die somewhere else if you want to live in a painting forever, just not mine. but how weird would it feel to build new copies of your friends? Some may argue that's what she's doing in Act 3, but no. Remember, Gomage deaths can be revived. Revived! It's part of why I hated the framing so much in Miles' ending. Yes, is it Verso's nightmare? Probably. It's the best explanation of that ending. But is it supposed to be viewed that way? In the end, I do believe these endings work purely thematically. The ending of the cycle and Miles can move on in the continuation of the cycle, except this is not a game about the Dissandras. Not enough. And I think that's going to be viewed as a hot take or just straight wrong, but no. I don't care for Real World Renoir, Aline, or even Clea, but Lord do I feel for Mael/Alicia. Aileen took out so much trust on Mael. Renoir refused to let Mael have the middle ground of being able to revisit Verso's painting due to Aileen's grief and being overbearing. And Clea? Well, I don't really have much about her, but in the brief time I spoke to her, she wasn't exactly nice. Why not Mael choose her own life? Yes, this ends up being a devastating choice to Verso, but legitimately, I'll argue it one last time. Verso can be convinced to enjoy life a little bit longer. We've all worked shifts we've hated, but had to do it to get paid. There is an end goal, because if Mael is earnest about growing old and dying eventually Verso's wish would come. Oh no, the Dissandras lost Alicia. You lost her the day you guys didn't handle your grief any better. Aileen's the worst of them all. Because at least I can understand Renoir's perspective. Renoir is still blamed for the reason Mael can't have it both ways. Oh, your mother will never heal properly, so we gotta make her by destroying the last piece of Verso. And Verso's perspective of, I am forced to spectate my family fighting over me when I do not even want to exist anymore. Verso's perspective makes sense as someone who doesn't view anything as real. I took on the side of the game that views it as real, so we're in different spots. To Verso, it's just a painting. To Reborn Mael, it was a second life, a life with people she loved, and a chance to spend real years with her brother. Mael says at the beginning of Act 3 that this character Verso isn't the real one, but by the end she says, I don't want to lose you again. She accepts this person as Verso because, hell, this is the only Verso we know. Alright, leaving that there. For those who jumped ahead, yes, the ending was really so problematic for me, it eats up that much runtime. To developers, I want to say with my full chest,
I need you to admit you had a choice, and that you made the wrong one.
Why are you really here? No, really. And I'm more talking to the people who just listened to me speak for like 12 minutes about the endings. You've already played this game. I even told you up front that this game sold about 3.3 million minimum, and was likely played by even more. I can understand being interested in just watching a video, maybe even to comment about how clickbait the title and topic is. Claire Obscure is so popular, and I'm guessing that I'm riding the wave just to hate on it, right? Or has the clickbait gotten so bad? My Animal Well video did poorly, and my confidence is plummeting, so this must be a reach, right? Why are you watching this video? Are you just waiting for the truth? Yes, Claire Obscure Expedition 33 is an excellent game, critiques and all, but that isn't what this video is for. This isn't a video about Claire Obscure Expedition 33. It's a video for the best story you've never played, 1000X Resist. As of me writing this, 1000X Resist is a little over a year old. Very much an award-winning game, but no speak of it on the big stage of gaming. It got nominated at the Hugo Awards, which is crazy if you know what the Hugo Awards are, and it won one of the Peabody Awards, which is an outlet centered around storytelling excellence, social issues, and emerging voices. Regardless of the it was nominated for so much, but winning these big ones is because 1000X Resist is a truly special game. 1000X Resist isn't a normal game. It meshes visual novel tendencies with a far more consumable runtime, still utilizing the fact that it is a game in many ways. It won't revolutionize a genre or even really be noted by major AAA companies because it isn't a breadwinner. It is, however, one of my favorite experiences I've ever had in gaming. Greatness exists in many forms, where Claire Obscure took the world by storm for blending old and new to huge benefits. 1000X Resist yearns to be progressive. Claire Obscure is relatively safe in a lot of ways. If a AAA company put out Claire Obscure, would you be surprised if it worked out? But if a AAA company put out 1000X Resist, That team would be shut down in a year, spread out to other projects, never to be heard from again. The industry is cutthroat. It's also why Clair Obscur is worth celebrating. It came from talented people who proved their worth on their idea and was celebrated for it. Thousand X Resist also came from talented people, but it was never going to be a major success. Without other video essayists and me talking about it, this game wouldn't get noticed. That's how I figured out about the game. Jacob Geller, Daryl Tux Gaming, inevitably a couple more. All this said, Major Corp's all about profits first, merch second, expanded universe third, and art sixth. We live in an age where people can make games like 1000 X Resist and be loved for it. 1000 X Resist can exist and be noticed, because gaming will never be fully corporate. Maybe one of the few art forms that can hold a balanced dominance and never monopolized. Because if major restrictions hit gaming, it's the most painful on the manipulators and the microtransactions, not the people just making art. Gameplay is a thing in 1000 X Resist, but it's not a visual novel. You have these slight puzzle components, a bit of movement, none of which is dopamine cramming, it's all complementary to the story. Some of these moments of direct linear movement have a punch to them, because you feel in the shoes of the main character. They're also about exploring files for information. They probably feel as jarred to be doing what we're doing. These scenes are emotionally driven and you feel that. Having a fun minigame or provoking the part of your brain that needs to be efficient isn't exactly helping a narrative experience, but being boring wouldn't be either. The story of 1000 X Resist is complicated, and oh, don't worry, that spoiler-free tag actually does apply to the entirety of the video. The story is complex. Each character you meet is distinct and has their own charms and quirks. Each chapter of the game is focused and purposeful, and Lord Almighty, you will not see any of it coming. It isn't an abstract experience, it's just so well crafted that thoughts wouldn't really appear in your head until it was needed. Visual novels are an inherently boring genre. It's about reading, beautiful visuals, engaging in narrative. It is a visual novel, but this is probably the most you can gamify without it being a narratively driven genre game. This is still undeniably a visual novel, but with crisp visuals, wonderful voice acting, and every emotional beat. For about the price of an Ultra HD Blu-ray, 2 one-topping pizzas from most places, large size, and other price equivalents, you could play through this experience, which is unlike any movie you could find. This game will definitely more appeal to gamers or niche anime enjoyers, but I do think that people outside of those groups can enjoy 1000 X Resist. It's just brazen in its creativity, so it won't be trying to be accessible. Word of mouth is oh so helpful, that's why I'm talking about it. Art styles are always an interesting thing. Back to one of my early critiques of Clair Obscur, it feels very much Unreal Engine a bit. 1000 X Resist maybe kind of looks like Rollerdrome a little bit, maybe like some of the 3D anime out there, but it is distinct, and at most, those other things are just referential to other visual styles, not boring. I've been using a lot of 1000 X Resist music throughout this video, and truly, it's shameful of me. The entire soundtrack is incredible and bolsters every moment in the game. One of the most powerful scenes, which kind of parallels Ava, I feel, is really enhanced with the incredible score. I can't talk about the story because of spoilers, even down to the first seconds of playing the game, but it has an impact unlike anything else I've ever had. I love a game that is committed to utilizing all its weird pieces and intersecting them with gameplay and more. The ending is a bit iffy, but also kinda satisfying. Funny enough, also not perfect, but this is I think it's 10 out of 10, but it has a couple things. I also think the ending can be argued for. Act 3. Finale. 1000 X Resist is the best game you've never played. Hoping Pyrocynical gets a hold of it, can someone get it to him, and then he dives into it or something, this thing will, it will pop off. It is the video game version of In Rainbows, Homogenic, other indie music classics. Clair Obscur deserves the love, that's why I so wrote about it for so long, but god damn it does that ending bother me so much. I wouldn't change it to something more linear, I just wish things were different there. Feels incomplete besides the thematic element. But you've played Clair Obscur, or you're going to. And please do. It's a wonderful RPG. But 1000 X Resist will always be hidden. Always need to be unearthed. And it deserves the time spent to play it. It deserves the love. The games are even more similar than you think. Like stars of two different genres. Clair Obscur is Chapel Rowan, 1000 X Resist is Jane Remover. Video games are beautiful pieces of art, and I'm just glad we're living in the best of times there. Many other ways, we live in a rough time. but we can share in the glory and the beauty that is art for those who come after.